Before we get to questions, we want to hear from these leaders, but this is the first time we've done kind of this virtual press rollout, so bear with us. I ask for your patience as we use Teams. If everyone remains on mute until you are ready to speak, that would be very helpful. If you are calling in, you may have to hit *6 and then unmute yourself to be heard. So thanks again for being with us today. And I'm going to turn it right over to an inspirational climate champion, our former Environmental Protection Administrator, who now serves as President and CEO of the NRDC, Gina McCarthy.
Well, first of all, thank you, Kathy Castor, for all of your terrific work, as well as every member of the committee here. I'm delighted to have been invited with the other impressive members of this terrific group to sort of launch this effort for you. You know, I really also have to commend Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker, for her vision in establishing this committee and charging it to find solutions that give us hope for a better future at a time when we all desperately need that hope. You know, the committee rose to the challenge and it's done an outstanding job in charting a way to a better future. Right now, our nation, as we know, is in crisis. We're grappling with a pandemic, police violence against Black Americans, record unemployment, and a global climate crisis all at once. So this plan could not come at a better time. You know, because it would be just way too easy for all of us to say that the challenges are too big to solve. But make no mistake, we can overcome these challenges. We can work together and demand a healthier and more just world. And that's what you're showing us how to do. This Climate Crisis Committee report is filled with bold solutions to tackle climate change, starting now. Putting this comprehensive plan into action would move us away from fossil fuels and invest in a better future for all of us. One that will put more people to work in clean energy, reduce pollution in our communities, especially where health and safety is most at risk, and it'd make our countries more resilient to the challenges we face ahead. It's going to lead to cleaner air, water, safer, more prosperous communities, and a brighter, healthier, and more promising tomorrow. This blueprint for action draws on the best of American innovation and ingenuity, and it outlines smart policies that will help the United States economy achieve zero carbon pollution by 2050. It just doesn't get any better than what you have delivered. This is the kind of leadership our country has needed, putting the well-being of people and communities in our economy ahead of profits and pollution. You know, I call it the Castor Plan. Forgive me if I shouldn't, but the Castor Plan puts people back to work, and it helps create a more just and equitable society for all of us. You know, before the pandemic, there were nearly 3.4 million people nationwide working in clean energy. And this plan will create millions more than that. Jobs helping to make cars and trucks of tomorrow. Jobs helping us get more clean energy from wind and solar. And building a modern national grid for marketing and storing that power. This plan helps position our workers and our companies for success in an ever-changing and growing global market for clean energy. It's going to drive research, development, new technologies, investments in job training. It is all in here for us to choose from and push hard. You know, this report also addresses environmental injustice, and I know others will speak to this, but we all know that the highest levels of pollution and the highest hazards are in communities that are low income, Black communities of color. And it is time that we face that reality. And we took a plan like this and made sure that we leave nobody behind. And so I think it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for all of us to live up to our commitment on justice, our commitment on a healthy and better future, our commitment to workers, to labor, to jobs, to a growing economy. So it is time to embrace our clean energy solutions that can make us stronger physically and economically in the face of this climate crisis. And I want to thank everybody for boldly showing us through this committee that we can tackle our climate crisis now. And it leaves us with only one question to ask. What are we waiting for? Let's go. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina McCarthy. Next, we'll hear from Michele Roberts. Michele is a proven champion in the fight for environmental justice, and she is the national co-coordinator of the Environmental Justice and Health Alliance for Chemical Policy Reform. Take it away, Michele. And don't.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Castor. Good afternoon to the sustained panel, and good afternoon, America. America, we have finally hit the mark. America, we are at the precipice of moral courage. America, the Environmental Justice Health Alliance for Chemical Policy Reform, which is actually legacy-based communities. When we say legacy, legacy that reach back to our hands past slavery in some spaces, through slavery, through Jim Crow, through all of these egregious activities that have befallen upon communities of color and the poor alike across this nation. Communities who actually were brave enough to create a more just, beloved community like the community of Mossville, who sought to be able to live in a more pristine and ecological way as we at the environmental justice neighbors and communities saw fit to show America what it is to mean about conservation, meaning where we live, work, worship, pray, and go to school. We thank God for the people who descended upon the steps, the many people who sold cakes and had bake sales and all of those other things to come in 1991 to bring to the foot of Congress the fact that we needed a more perfect union that spoke to the fact that unless we addressed environmental racism and the legacies and the complexities of this nation, that we will be in a crisis called a climate crisis. We thank God for the fact that today we are united in this fact of understanding what it means to not be able to breathe, what it means to be able to have COVID-19. And we say, go wash your hands and sing happy birthday. And guess what? Many of our communities don't even have access to water to wash their hands in. We understand what it means to be in a climate crisis. We have been seeking to live within our means and making sure our Mother Earth and our humanity is protected. America, we thank you for today. Hallelujah. You reached into your moral courage. You met our communities where they are, fence line, front line, in graves, in hospitals, in your offices, in the streets, shouting environmental racism. Enough is enough, and we must have a more perfect and just union for all of us. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all of us deserve the humanity and right to clean air, clean water, and to the land that we live on. And we owe our Native, Indigenous, and brothers and sisters a debt of gratitude for even putting up with the atrocities that we have allowed to happen to them and their communities, even though we're on their land. So today, America, we have the opportunity. We know it's not going to be easy, but guess what? With the faith of our ancestors and the faith of these children and the faith of us all united together in love, my brothers and sisters, in love, we can witness the waters roll down like mighty rivers that Dr. King espoused on. And we can witness what we needed as our dear sister Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, Harriet Tubman, all Sojourner Truth and others spoke to. Thank you for your moral courage. Now let's arm up, arm in arm, heart to heart, faith to faith, courage to courage, because we're going to change this world. I truly do believe it, and I give thanks to my parents, Les Roberts and Jackie Roberts, who gave birth for me to be able to do such a thing as this. God bless America. God bless this world, and God bless all of you. I'm ready for the work. The question is, are all of you? Thank you, Chairwoman.
Amen. Michele Roberts, fantastic. Next up is Brigid Shea, Commissioner Brigid Shea from Travis County, Texas. Commissioner Shea is the board chair of ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. The floor is yours, Commissioner.
Thank you so much, Chair Castor, and I'm honored and humbled to follow Michele Roberts. That's a tough act to follow, but I do have the two hats. ICLEI is the leading global local governments for sustainability, and it represents over 1,750 local and regional governments that are committed to sustainability and resilience. So I'm honored to be here in that capacity, but also as a local elected official, as a county commissioner in Travis County, which is Austin, Texas. Our community is absolutely feeling the brunt of climate change. And that's the reality for all local governments and local elected officials. It's their residents that are being harmed by the wildfires and the floods and the droughts and the effects of hurricanes and tornadoes and increasingly deadly and destructive weather. And we desperately need the federal government to be an active partner with our communities and to have a clear and consistent and uniform set of policies and plans. So I'm incredibly grateful to all of you and Speaker Pelosi for the leadership to give this kind of roadmap and blueprint for us to begin to truly commit to solving the climate crisis. It's costing lives. It's completely disrupting communities. It is harming our economy. And it's about time the federal government really got in action around it. So I'm grateful to you all. I'm just going to mention a couple of things around resilience. One of the realities for major parts of the planet, but definitely for Central Texas, is we are becoming hotter and drier. And so we experienced massive drought in 2011 that threatened our drinking water supply. And I think this happens in many places. Once it's over, people forget. But as a resilience initiative, we did this at the county level, and it's something that can be done, again, all over the country, but it would be done better with more federal guidance on it. We use enormous amounts of water for air conditioning in the hot parts of the country. So instead of using treated drinking water, we swapped out the water supply for our air conditioning systems for our county buildings to use treated wastewater. So we permanently removed, on the demand side, 10 million gallons a year. So that will help us stretch our drinking water supply. Ultimately, we have to have more water efficient air conditioning systems, but that's just one little thing that can be done. And what I find is that most people are completely unaware of this. So that's a case where federal guidance could be profoundly helpful. Another one on resilience is we're the fourth or fifth highest wildfire danger location in the country. Again, a lot of people in our community are not aware of it, but we looked around to see if there was a model for neighborhood-based fire drills, just to help neighborhoods be more prepared and be more resilient. We couldn't find any examples, so we created one here, and I'm delighted. We just learned that we won the National Association of Counties Award for our neighborhood-based fire drill, and our intent was run the experiment, see if it works, and if it does, scale it up and make it available to everyone. It's a simple idea. We all did fire drills in school, but we couldn't find one for neighborhoods, so we created one. Another area is in the realm of emergency notifications around severe and deadly weather. I think most of us have seen the data from the Camp Fire in California, where 85 people burned to death in their cars. after the analysis, they determined that many of those people weren't getting emergency notifications and didn't know that they needed to evacuate. So we've been working regionally to up our emergency notification system, move it more towards cell phones because it was largely landline based. And I don't know about you, but most people I know don't have landlines for their telephones. So those are just a few examples of the kinds of resilience initiatives that we've done locally, and that having uniform guidance from the federal government could be such a profound help for local communities to be better prepared and to help them get themselves out of harm's way. So I am just incredibly grateful again. Thank you all so much for your leadership. And I'm amening Michele Roberts. I am ready to get into the fight and do whatever we need to do. So thank you again, and my privilege to be here.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner. This is the most impactful and comprehensive report to the Congress ever done when it comes to strengthening our communities to become more resilient. So thank you for highlighting that. And I hope we get a lot of questions on that side of the report. Next up is Alexis Aqavzik, Rexford, Civicac, Alaska. Alexis, you're going to have to help me with the Alaskan pronunciation. Alexis is a fellow at the Alaska Youth for Environmental Action. Hi, Alexis. Welcome. Please proceed.
Hi, thank you. And thank you to everyone for your work. Wanga Alexis Rexford, Atapaka Aqavzik, Sibuka kami ngunga, naka kamlinganguk, Ataka Dalbert Rexford nguk, Utkiakabumung, Imarmka kingunga. Hello everyone, I'm Alexis Rexford. My Siberian Yupik name is Aqavzik. I'm from Gamble, Alaska, a Siberian Yupik community located on St. Lawrence Island, and it is traditionally known as Sibukak. My mother is the late Darlene of Pangaluk, and my father is Delbert Rexford from Aqavzik. I'm from the Imarmka clan of Sibukak. I'm grateful for the space to share my experiences in navigating the climate crisis as a young Indigenous woman. And today I'm speaking to you from my ancestral homeland, the Nupiat lands of Aqavzik, Alaska. I'll start off by saying that it is not easy. I interpret the climate crisis in two very different worldviews. The first being a Siberian Yupik and a Nupiat person. Just within the short amount of time I've lived in Gamble, I witnessed the devastating impacts of this existential crisis. We have seen drastic changes in sea ice patterns, land erosion, and mass bird die-off. I live in constant anxiety for the day that our people are unable to harvest the foods that keep us and our culture alive and healthy. I fear the day that we will be forced to relocate from our sacred settlement. The anxiety is widespread, and it is the reality within our communities. The second view is actually studying the climate crisis as an environmental public health student. While our people are disproportionately affected and our rights to environmental justice are violated. Growing up in Gamble, my culture has taught me more about sustaining the earth than any biology textbook. The Siberian Yupik, alongside other Indigenous peoples, have lived in union with the earth's natural cycles since time immemorial by practicing our subsistence lifestyles. Did you know that the word subsistence is a colonial term that is defined as the action or fact of maintaining or supporting oneself at a minimal level? This Western ideology of rich Alaska Native cultures is deceiving. We do not just merely survive off of the land, we live and breathe with it. What happens to the land happens to us. We rely solely on the environment for sustenance and possess generations worth of ecological knowledge. My late grandfather, Leonard of Pangaluk, a lifelong hunter, knew that the natural cycles of the earth were changing by observing sea ice and weather patterns, as well as animal behavior. He documented decades of environmental deterioration by recording daily weather records and worked closely with climate scientists. While global climate movements spread messages of unite behind the science, they fail to recognize Indigenous knowledge as a form of science. Traditional ecological knowledge is profoundly underrepresented in climate research. So I ask you to amplify Indigenous voices in social institutions and spaces regarding environmental justice. The knowledge implanted within Indigenous cultures is an invaluable resource that can drive a just transition toward a sustainable economy. Alaska is on the front lines of this climate crisis, yet we are often forgotten in national discussions. We ask you to follow the leadership of Indigenous Alaskans who are putting forth solutions, and for the federal government to support us. Aqavzik, thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexis. Last but certainly not least is Dr. Elena Reyes. Dr. Rios is the president and CEO of the National Hispanic Medical Association. Welcome, doctor.
Thank you. And I want to also say how important it has been to have Speaker Pelosi and yourself, Congresswoman, lead us in this fantastic effort to have climate crisis policies that we have dreamed about for the last 3 or 4 years to be, reality. And for the Latino community in the United States, they're the largest ethnic group in the country. I'm from the Los Angeles area originally, Mexican-American families. And, for generations, our families have enjoyed working and encouraging our sisters and brothers and children to reach for the stars and do what they can to help their communities. When I was a college student at Stanford, when I went to medical school at UCLA, the Latinos that I met, we're all first generation in our communities to actually go to higher education in this country. And I came to Washington in the Clinton administration, and with a group of doctors, we decided that Latino doctors, that we needed to have our own organization to be able to express the immense knowledge and wisdom that come from health professionals in our country, doctors, nurses, dentists, social workers, mental health workers, who have taken care of our communities, but have never really had a voice in Washington, D.C., because we come from the other part of the country. And we have Latinos now everywhere, and our communities, I think, really deserve to have better policies that are culturally competent, linguistically appropriate. And I see that this will happen with this policy. The healthcare infrastructure under COVID-19 demands change. We now know how important it is to be able to communicate with your patients, how to be able to communicate with families, and to make decisions for those who are elders, especially who get really sick right now with and climate change is just going to impact even more people having to face death and dying. But we also know with air pollution and toxic water, toxins in our carbon plants, that even children and pregnant women and their fetuses are all impacted. And, as a Latino community, we need to, encourage everyone to be aware and to educate themselves of the importance of the carbon footprint that we all make, and that we need to work with you, work with Speaker Pelosi and all of Congress on the importance of doing our best to help change policies in all our communities across the country. And then just one thing I'll add, that this bill does affect the veterans' health infrastructure and also the mental health infrastructure that is so needed when we have so many diseases impacted by heat and droughts and wildfires, and as well as air pollution. And I think that the last thing I'll say is that Hispanics in this country, or Latinos in this country, only make up 5% of the doctors, and yet we're 18% of the population. We only have 2% of the nurses, and there's so much that we're doing. Our National Hispanic Medical Association has created a network of Hispanic health professional groups with the dentists and social workers, public health professionals, nurses, who are all trying to do what they can. And I offer them to help with all of the campaign and education that needs to be done throughout our country on climate change. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rios. I think you're absolutely right that COVID, like climate, is shined a light on the vulnerabilities among people of color and folks on the front lines. And it's also shined a light on the weaknesses in our healthcare infrastructure across America. So I know everyone's eager to get to questions from the media. Dana, I hope we have a good lineup because we've got some terrific experts here. And I include the outstanding members of the select committee.
Hi, welcome to everyone, and thank you so much. Just to encourage people to direct your questions specifically at either one of our speakers or one of the members of our select committee that are on the line and ready to take your questions. What I am going to do is I'm going to read off names. I've gone through the attendees and checked off people that I'm seeing in the room. If for some reason I've missed someone, please do unmute yourself so that I don't skip over you in question order. So please do on your phone hit *6 and the mute button if you've muted your actual phone, as well as if you're on the computer, make sure that you've hit the unmute button on your microphone. So hopefully everyone's got the instructions down and we can start moving through the question order. So first up, we've got Nick. I'm so sorry, I'm going to butcher your last name. Sobis. Thank you. From E&E News. I don't think he's on. Benjamin Hulock from CQ. Okay, and then Marianne Laval from Inside Climate News, who I believe is on the line. So Marianne, you're up first.
Okay, I thought the CQ guy was, but that's fine. Do you want my camera on or not off?
Hi, Marianne.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this. And I wanted to direct this to Representative Castor and maybe some of her colleagues on the committee. Can you talk a little bit about any effort you made to engage Republicans on this issue? And kind of related to that, since they do not seem to be engaged right now on this, what are you doing or what can you do to make sure your whatever policies you adopt are durable, politically durable? Because you know, I'm sure as Gina McCarthy can tell you, you don't want to have a policy that's undone 4 years or 8 years from 2021. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks. So the select committee was set up as a bipartisan committee, and we held bipartisan hearings and briefings all along together, worked together all year. We think that there is common ground, definitely in the industrial sector and innovation, maybe in agriculture and resilience. This is a majority staff report, and after talking with Ranking Member Graves last week, I think that the Republicans intend to draft a minority report, and we agreed that in the coming months we'll work on some bipartisan recommendations to go to the Congress, and I'm hopeful for that.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to add to that. This is Suzanne Bonamici. The report contains, first of all, it's an honor to work with this great group of colleagues and under Chair Castor's leadership. The report references many pieces of legislation, and many of them are bipartisan. Some of them have actually passed the House. For example, in the care of the oceans. The ocean covers most of the planet, and the ocean reflects the health of the planet. Things like ocean acidification, blue carbon, those are bipartisan proposals. Harmful algal blooms, bipartisan. In the workforce area, for example, the Builds Act, so we can help getting apprenticeships out there to open up these opportunities for good paying jobs to people historically left behind, bipartisan. So there are many pieces in this report that are bipartisan. In my opinion, more should be and can be, and will continue to work to build bipartisan support, because these issues affect all of us regardless of party, and pollution doesn't know state boundaries or local boundaries. We should all be working together and looking at this as economic opportunity for all, and an opportunity to really address right now, with millions of people out of work, a way to grow our economy in a sustainable way. So again, a lot is already bipartisan. We'll continue to make more of it. So
I'll just add one thing. This is Congressman Jared Huffman, and I'll tell you something that would make it a lot easier to make bipartisan progress is if our Republican colleagues would accept the imperative of breaking from fossil fuel as part of our response to this crisis. There continues to be a bit of a disconnect here where they now say they're ready to talk about climate. They would like to work with us, but as much as we would like that, as much as we're interested in that, the ideas they continue to put on the table revolve around fossil fuel as the only tool to continue to rely on. And that just doesn't work. The experts, the science, all of it is quite clear. We've got to make a dramatic break from fossil fuel. And getting our Republican colleagues to acknowledge that and accept it and work with us on how we do that is really what's needed to be more bipartisan right now.
This is Sean Caston. If I could jump in, you asked about durability. The way we make this durable is by passing it legislatively. It is tragic that we had an executive order to join the Paris Climate Accord that was then undone by an ex-president. So we have to work to pass this legislatively and make it sticky. But what we set out to do was to solve the problem that is scientifically necessary. It is tragic that the answer to that question is not synonymous with what can be done on a bipartisan basis. But our kids, our grandkids do not give a damn about whether or not we did something on a bipartisan basis. They care that we give them a planet that is habitable. And that's what we were informed by as a goal. I would hope that all of our colleagues will come on board. But to stipulate as a first goal bipartisanship, unless that's going to lead to good policy, is to decide to lose. We're playing to win.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. So I have the next couple of questions. Anthony Adragna from Politico. I don't believe he's on the line. Doug Obie from Inside EPA. Emily Holden from The Guardian, and Joey West from Spectrum Bay News 9. I don't believe either of them are on the line, so I'll just keep going. Rebecca Lieber from Mother Jones. I don't think she's on. And then Monica, oh, did I hear I got that incorrect? Okay. And then Monica Samoya from Oregon Public Broadcasting. So I think based on who I see on the line, we have Doug and then Monica.
Doug, as a reminder, if you're on the phone, you need to do *6 and also make sure your phone is unmuted. If you're trying to ask a question, we can't hear you.
Hi, Doug Obie from Inside EPA.
Hi, Doug.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to ask quickly about this report includes a lot of EPA-related recommendations, and I was wondering if people could speak to those in terms of both, do they see any consensus on these, or are they likely to be highly contentious on the Hill? But also, which ones do you see as among the most significant of those recommendations? Thank you.
You're right. It's chock full of important recommendations for our Environmental Protection Agency. I'll highlight a few. You know, this is a report that is built upon a foundation of environmental justice and fair labor standards. And when we say that, what we mean is that we're going to task EPA with putting our frontline communities, the communities of color, environmental justice communities, first in line, that when we target resources to clean up toxic sites, or we're going to ratchet down on emissions, or we're going to build capacity, that's where we're going to start, because those communities have, as Michele said, suffered a legacy of years, decades, hundreds of years being the location where the toxic sites, the industrial sites are located. So we say it's time for EPA to take account of cumulative impacts. We need to pass that into law. So I'll highlight a few of those. You can look at clean car standards too. Those are important. I bet Michele or our former EPA administrator could highlight a few that stuck out to them as well.
Well, let me just point out, I think Chair Castor pointed out one of the biggest ones is the clean cars, which is a terrific opportunity to regain ground on this issue and to make sure that we're manufacturing in the US the cars of the future. But overall, I think you see a number of EPA-related programs, because if there's one thing that we have all learned during the coronavirus crisis, is that if you don't pay attention to science, then you are at significant risk. And so what this entire plan is based on looking at what science demands and how to deliver it in a way that not only addresses the pollution that is fueling climate change, but brings immediate relief to communities that are right now devastated by traditional pollutants as well, and more at risk in a changing climate. So the reason why you see such significant overlap is we have seen significant rollbacks in really fundamental public health protections, not just of the prior administration, but for the overall ways in which for the past 50 years, we have invested in people and protecting people's health. But you also see this as being a plan that is based in science, reality, fact, how we move forward together in a way that doesn't just address the environmental challenges, but does it in a way that grows a much stronger, more inclusive, and more just economy. That's why there's so many overlaps here.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what the former EPA administrator, thank you for that. And the chairwoman said, it is very important for us to realize and recognize the fact that while we are so thankful for clean cars, but we need clean communities. You know, sad to say, there's been a huge disconnect. We don't, and we won't go down into the weeds as to why, but there's been a huge disconnect between that of public health and the environment, and how it is that it is intersected and connected to make sure that we take care of the very least of these. We, you know, our communities hear time and time again, it's planning's fault. It's the public health, you know, we go to public health and we say we have too much pollution. Public health says go outside and walk and eat better foods. Oh, by the way, you're in a food desert. But then we allow for people, last time we checked, you can eat in a desert because desert, thanks to our Native Indigenous families have shown us how you can survive by eating, right? Because that is not surviving, that's living within the land. But then when we're told that the disparities that we are showing time and time again are not enough for the permits that are being permitted, you know, we have to do something about that. And then just quickly, the way in which we can cross the aisle is that in these, as we're moving forward in these economic development plans, is we look at things like the opportunity zones, which came out of the Trump administration, but impact Black and brown communities as far as development is concerned. This is where our elected officials can help us. Just very last, that's why in our equitable and just climate work, we are working with folks like the National Black Caucus of State Legislatures who have fully adopted the equitable and just climate platform as their way in which to build. And because at the end of the day, we have people in our families who are Republicans. And so we need to, if we're going to talk about making a more perfect union, then we need to figure out how we all work together to make it that more perfect union. Thank you.
Great. So next up we have Monica, and then Rebecca Beach from The Hill, and then Valerie, from Reuters. So those are going to be our next three.
And don't forget *6 and unmute your phone or unmute yourself on the computer. Dana, who were you expecting a question from?
Next is going to be Monica Samoya from Oregon Public Broadcasting. I guess she is not on. Okay, so we'll move down to Monica. Are you there? Okay. And then Rebecca Beach from The Hill. Okay. She must have hopped off. And then
Dana, can you pause for a minute?
Sure.
If you're not a speaker or a member of the select committee, can you please go off your camera? Thanks.
And then we have next Dean Scott, Bloomberg Environment. I don't think I saw Dean. Okay. Katie, I'm not going to get your last name. I'm sorry. From Green Biz. Don't think I saw her. Valerie from Thomson Reuters. She was on. She may have hopped off. Okay. All right. Stephanie Ebbs from ABC News. Stephanie, you would be next. Okay. Rebecca Hersher. Zoya. Jean. Okay. Louise Boyle. All right. Justin Warland.
I'm here.
Great. You're next.
Thank you for getting to my question. So one of the big takeaways when in the attempt to pass cap and trade was there was a lack of a grassroots coalition behind the legislation. So I'm just curious if you could speak a bit to how this report and comes out of it help build a coalition to actually pass big legislation in the coming Congress. That's for Chair Castor and anyone else who might want to take it.
Yeah, our outreach and engagement was deep and broad, and that is what we need to pass very far-reaching climate action. We need to build those coalitions. So I'm going to turn it over to some of my committee members to talk about the coalitions that are out there. These are the folks who need to be motivated to press policymakers now to turn our recommendations into legislative action, into law. So maybe I'll go to Rep. McCeachin. Don't forget to unmute.
I'm not sure that he's on. I think they were having some technical difficulties.
No, he's there.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's just too many microphones to have to unmute. Thank you, Madam Chair. You're absolutely right. The grassroots support is so critical to our efforts. And one of the things that we did with Rep. Grijalva, who is the chair of Natural Resources, is we put together what's now known as the Environmental Justice for All bill. For too long, our brown and Black and indigenous communities have been dictated to from Washington as to what the solution should be. We took an opposite approach. We went to them and said, look, we know that you're a discrete community. We know that you know what your answers are. How can we empower you? And so for a year and a half, we listened to them. We listened to them through the internet. We had folks come to Washington to share their thoughts. And after about a year and a half, we cobbled together some principles behind EJ communities. And we also cobbled together the bill that's now known as the Environmental Justice for All Act, which you, Madam Chair, and my colleagues were kind enough to graft into this report. It is my opinion that you're going to see an awesome army of EJ communities come forward because they have bought into this bill. This is their bill. I can honestly say there is no plan of office because I didn't write it. They wrote it. And so we did that, one, to make sure we got it right, but also to make sure we had the buy-in from communities across this nation that would come forward and pass the legislation. I yield.
Great. And I do want to highlight, I also recall on the pre-COVID days, we were able to travel a little bit, and for Rep Brownlee there in Southern California, I remember very well you taking me to your military installation. There is a defense community and national security coalition that is encouraging us forward. You also took me to your port. You took me to visit with farmers. These are the kind of broad-based coalitions. What else? Who else am I missing, Rep Brownlee?
You need to unmute yourself, Rep Brownlee.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I apologize for that. I think you hit upon all the places we visited, Kathy. But you're right. I think all of those areas that you mentioned, whether it's national security, whether it's our farmers, our farm workers. I mean, there are loud voices out there who really understand the critical importance of addressing the climate crisis. I mean, it is obviously for our farming community, it's a matter of feeding our country, and they struggle with not enough water and wildfires that we have in our district, so forth and so on. Same thing with a large naval base in my district, where it's a coastal base, and really worried about sea level rise and the like there. And in all places, I think that we visited, you saw that that the community is really moving forward in a resilient way to really sort of address these. But we need a national response as well. But I think overall, I think even pre-COVID, you mentioned pre-COVID, I think overall, the voices around the country were very loud with regards to the climate crisis and the need to act most urgently. And I think that when you look at our youth right in this very moment, they're marching on our streets to address the institutional racism that exists in our country. But once we get this all out, to every corner, I think, of the country, we will reawaken the young people who are marching on our streets right now for a very important issue in our country, but they're going to march again for our planet and for our earth, and they understand the importance. And they are the ones, as we all said in the press conference today, it is the young people that really, indeed, made this happen. You had extraordinary leadership, Kathy. The speaker had the vision to put the select committee together, but was really those voices out there that said, we're done. If you don't start acting, we need the adults in the room to act. And I think that activism is strong and well.
Can we ask Alexis to weigh in on that, on the youth movement?
Good
I'd love
idea.
to hear from Alexis.
Good idea.
Yeah, thank you for that. Speaking from my perspective, I'm in this movement as not only like a young person, but as an Indigenous person as well. And what that means for me is, I'm like standing up for the earth, but then also recognizing the fact that the earth will live on regardless, and it's just a matter of sustaining the resources we need to keep going as the human race.
Chair Castor, I'll just jump in. This is Brigid, Shea, and Travis County, Austin, Texas. I think there's a real hunger across the country for a plan that helps provide policy solutions. And I'm requesting briefings for a number of the groups that I'm connected with, but I think that's something that could be done across the country. There are a lot of organizations that are, again, hungry for this kind of guidance. And if they had the blueprint and they, got any details about what legislation to support and what messages to send to members, I think that would be very, very helpful and powerful.
Great idea, Commissioner.
Yeah, can I just also, this is Dr. Rios with the National Hispanic Medical Association. We do a lot of mentoring with young college students who are always eager to help. We do mentoring to get them into health careers like nurses and dentists and doctors and even social workers and, mental health workers. And I have to say that the coalitions that we have been a part of for climate change among the Latino community range from farm workers to the people who are really adamant about the carbon plants, the water rising levels in on the East Coast, the Gulf Coast, and all the oil spills. So we've been engaged with a lot of different young people that are in coalitions. And also there are, I'm going to say, traditional coalitions in our communities that have always been there to help their own communities. Going back to the 1920s and 1930s, when my grandparents came from Mexico, they got help from local community, CBOs. And we have the large groups across the country, the LULACs and the National Council La Raza groups that have been here for generations. But we also have real interested young people that understand the need for a clean air and clean water. And whatever we can do to help galvanize that with you all, that's what we're here for. Thank you.
Excellent.
Can I just say that we are grateful for opportunities such as what Congressman McCeachin and Chair Grijalva have created for us, and I hear when we talk about, I'm a scientist and I'm a proud graduate of one of the best historically Black colleges and universities in this nation. But I equally think about the children who are not going to college. I equally think about the children whose education is impacted because they're attending schools right next door to very high risk facilities, and their learning abilities have been co-opted by very nasty chemicals and what have you. And so with that, it's very rewarding for us to see that in this plan, there is a plan to not only reach to that of higher academia, but equally to reach to like our community colleges and our places. As we say, we redefined for America in the 90s what environmentalism means. And for us, it's an intergenerational obligation. I really love and respect and appreciate my sister in Alaska. I think of folks like Vi Wahigi and others who it's for us, this is about our very existence. And so it is very rewarding for us to be able to welcome folks like Congressman McCeachin's staff and Chairman Grijalva's staff into the kitchens of our communities when we have coffee table conversations, if you will. And when the EJ for All bill was released and the staff came on a Tuesday night, and our communities were filled with joy hearing the various points that came from that bill. And they're going, I shared that. I said that. And so you see where I'm going? This is where we're talking about making that more perfect union. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're grateful for this process. And unless it's people driven and we are morally courageous enough to really address the fact of racism, I hear what we say about our young people, but it's disingenuous to put all that responsibility on them when we have a over 400 plus year disrespect to humanity based on racism and the impacts of colonization. We need to be bold and courageous to call it what it is and then work as the family to make it right. Thank you so much for this.
Great. Chair Castor, it's 2 p.m., so I sort of defer to you and our speakers. If you want to take one or two more questions.
Yeah, let's take one or two more questions, and if anyone has to has another appointment or something, they're welcome to drop off. But let's take a few more, couple more.
Great. So Ermi, I don't believe is on anymore. Mitch Perry, Jennifer Dooley, Charlie McGee, Guy Kovner, Zach Sampson. Okay. Gordon Bird. All right. Bruce Ritchie. All right. Mosey. Okay. And Nick, I believe that you're back on the line and you were at the top of our order. So I just wanted to make sure we got your question in if you had one.
Oh yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi Nick. Yes, hi Nick.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for doing this. So I hope this wasn't asked already, but basically my question is, I think we all know that the Senate is not going to take this up with Mitch McConnell at the helm, or any climate bill. So what is sort of the political future for this report? I mean, like what are we setting the groundwork for here?
Well, that's similar to the questions that we're getting on, gosh, why are you doing this in the middle of a pandemic? Why are you doing this while we are protesting systemic racism? Because we can't wait. We're running out of time. It's urgent. We can't just wait for Mitch McConnell's graveyard for the turnover in the tombstones at the other end of the Capitol. There are some things that we're doing right away. If you look at the infrastructure bill, the moving forward package that we will vote on this week, it contains a number of policies that are pushed forward in the report. I think I'll go to one of our freshman members who ran for Congress because we're running out of time. Rep. Levin, you can speak to this and political realities, but there is another bigger reality out there. It's called the climate crisis.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Castor, and thank you for convening us. Thanks to our great staff for all their hard work again in putting the report together. We can't just wait for someone else to take action. This is absolutely critical that we take the responsibility in the House of Representatives. Many of us were elected, as the chair said, in particular, Mr. Casson and myself, on the issue of climate change. And I remember very well running for office. The Washington Examiner did a story saying that I was gambling my campaign on climate change. And I thought, what a crazy thing to say for me to run authentically as somebody that's been involved in clean energy for a long time. I think it would be a gamble not to be focused on climate change. So I think this is really a foundation of what we can achieve. It was not easy to pull together in a cohesive way all of the different pieces of legislation from our colleagues across the Democratic caucus. But this is a great starting point for what needs to happen. And I think what's fantastic is that when you add up all this work, some of which has already been introduced in the House, other things will require new legislation. It actually is commensurate with the science in terms of the scope and scale of what is going to be needed. And as far as, I just want to echo my colleague's comments on the importance of youth activism. It's so incredibly important that we work with our young activists and help them lead the change that we need. And I was reminded that in September of last year, we actually heard from Greta Thunberg, who came and testified, and she recently brought up that the COVID crisis demonstrates that governments around the world can suddenly act with the necessary force when faced with a global emergency. I think our great challenge, and that a challenge that is really illuminated by this report, is that it's going to take broad and comprehensive action, and we really don't have time to spare. And so again, I commend Chair Castor for her great work and the great staff and all my colleagues. It's been an honor to serve on this committee with you.
I would just add too that this report wasn't designed to
Your audio cut out, Rep. Brownlee.
I was just trying to say that, you know, this report was not designed to put, you know, this big 500+ page report into a piece of legislation. It was really designed to identify the legislation that is out there and to identify the policy areas where we don't have legislation yet, and to distribute those pieces of legislation through the various committees. And so the sense of urgency around this is so great. It is better that we move forward on part of what is in the report than nothing at all. That's good. That is really important. There, I think it's fair to say that there are probably pieces in this report that we are not going to be able to accomplish until we have a Democratic Senate and a president who's willing to sign our legislation. But there is a lot of legislation out there that can be moved forward and can be moved on a bipartisan basis. And the point is that we're acting, you know, that we're really acting now. And I would really challenge anyone to come up with what they believe would be a legislative fix to our climate crisis that's not included in this report. I mean, it is, when we say comprehensive, it's not just a word we're picking out of the hat. It is comprehensive. And I would challenge anyone to come up with a piece of legislation that we have that we haven't covered in this report. So it was really designed to move in incremental steps. But it was designed to move in incremental steps but to move immediately.
This is Suzanne Bonamici, and just to add on to the we can't wait. We already know that there are more extreme weather events. We are seeing reduced snowpack, ocean acidification, all of these critical issues that demand action, not now, but years ago. So we can't wait in that regard. But right now, at this moment where there are millions of people out of work, it is time to say, we can look at this as an opportunity to create good jobs, family wage jobs, and address the economic racial justice issues by expanding those opportunities for those good jobs to people traditionally left behind, and address the health crisis as well. So this is the opportune time, and we can't wait not only on climate, but on getting people back to work in good jobs. So it is time to move forward. And finally, the country is with us. You know, the administration wants to plant a bunch of trees. Planting trees is good. We don't object to planting trees, but that is not a plan that is going to reduce enough emissions and get us to where we need to be. And the polling across the country, people want us to take action. So we are.
This is Sean Caston. I want to just state the obvious, because sometimes we don't say it, but we should. If all of us got into work in the morning and said, we're only going to do things that Mitch McConnell will take up in the Senate, we have a lot of free time. Come on, hold us to a higher standard than that, right? Stuff's got to get done. We have put together a bill that in aggregate gets 90% of the CO2 gone by 2050 and goes negative after that. That saves $9 trillion in health costs. And by the way, we haven't yet calculated the savings in energy costs, because everything you do to lower CO2 emissions lowers your cost of energy because you don't have to pay for energy. Saves 62,000 lives a year. The fact that we sit on this call and say, yeah, McConnell's not going to take that up, speaks volumes about Mr. McConnell's character. Do not allow any of ourselves to sink to that level. This job requires more duty to that. We have an obligation to the public. It's going to grow the economy. It's going to help our health. And we got to push to do what's right, not what the folks on the other side of, I mean, look, I mean, we could get McConnell's signature if we threw in everybody gets a gun and maybe we do some anti-gay bashing. I don't know, you know, that's not a basis for good policy. So we're doing what's necessary. We will go to the polls saying we did what was necessary. And when you put adults in charge, you get policies that address the crises of our time. Send us more adults in November, please.
May I just add something?
Sure.
This is Gina. I just wanted to add that, you know, having you take the lead like this is enormously important. But what is even most important is the process that you took to get here. You have engaged people all over this country in this effort. Communities that have never been asked what they want, you asked. You have crafted this in a way that is inclusive. And you have restored many of our faith in democracy as a result, because you did it the way that strengthens our government and allows people to get engaged. So when you put this out, I don't think you're going to be standing alone. And isn't that what this is all about? We will be behind you. We will never let Mitch McConnell or any single individual rob us of our children's future, period. And so we need to stand behind you. We shouldn't expect you to be the sole people on this battlefield that we call fighting against this climate crisis. And so I just want to thank you for that. I want to encourage you to be fearless. And I want you to know that you should have the vast majority of human beings in the United States of America standing behind you, because we care and share the same values. We want this country to be strong. We want our people to be healthy. And damn it, my grandchildren are going to have a healthy future. And I don't care who comes in between me and them, they ain't going to be around long. So thank you for everything that you've done, but more importantly, how you've done it.
And just a final chime in here from Travis County, Austin, Texas. The chaos and the disruption that we're living through during this pandemic is related to climate change. The scientists predicted this years ago. We will see more pandemics because of the disruption of the climate. And we need to be learning lessons from this. So this is absolutely the right time. And I think people are literally begging for leadership around climate solutions. So you have my eternal gratitude, and I stand ready to work with you all in any way I can, including that, you know, trying to get the word out to grassroots groups so that they can become part of an army of advocates for sensible legislation. But thank you all so much.
On behalf of environmental,
yeah, go ahead, Michele. Go ahead.
Environmental Justice Health Alliance for Chemical Policy Reform, we too feel the same way, and we are looking anxiously forward to reading all 500 plus pages. This is one book we're looking forward to reading, and equally looking forward to running with, to make sure that every seat on Capitol Hill is for this piece. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. Well, I think that's going to do it today. I was excited when the report came together. I was thrilled to stand with my colleagues on the Capitol steps today, but I am more enthusiastic than ever after being on this call with all of you. So thank you very much. And for any other members of the media that maybe didn't get their question in, please be in touch. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe and well.
Thanks all. Wear a mask.
Yes.
Yep. And great to meet you all. Thank you for your work, all of you.
Yes.